Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Harvard Kennedy School and the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. My name is Trey Grayson. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics. We're glad to have everybody here. I became the director in 2011, and right around that time, a group of undergraduates started hosting West Wing Wednesdays in the student office here at the IOP. Yeah, some of you have been there, and started at the beginning and have been working their way through the show. And for about a year ago, somebody said, hey, we ought to do a little West Wing reunion thing and have a forum about it. And so today, after a lot of work, we'll be able to pull this off. I'm really excited to introduce Lawrence O'Donnell. Y'all probably feel like you know him. You see him on TV, on MSNBC and other settings. But he was a writer and executive producer of The West Wing. And we're really glad to have him and Bradley and a couple other folks digitally with us this afternoon. So please join me in welcoming Lawrence.
So, Brad, the kids are watching an old TV show, it sounds like. We also have Janelle Maloney joining us by Skype from New York City. Hi, Janelle.
Hi, guys.
We wish, by the way, we are going to get Richard Schiff, who's going to be able to get to us. He's in the makeup trailer right now in San Francisco, and somehow he's going to get on the phone between takes and tell you how he discovered the Toby character. And I thought I'd begin with a clip of these two great ones and show you where these characters met, where Josh and Donna met. And the interesting thing about this clip is it is not their first scene in the series. It is in the second season of the series, and it was only then when Aaron Sorkin actually who wrote the pilot, it was only then that Aaron actually figured out when they met. And that sometimes happens in writing. And this is an example of that. It's a flashback scene in the second season to when they met when Martin Sheen, Josiah Bartlett, was beginning his campaign for president in New Hampshire. Let's look at that scene.
Hi.
Hi,
Who are you?
I'm Donna Moss. Who are you?
I'm Josh Lyman.
Ah,
Yes.
I'm your new assistant.
Did I have an old assistant?
Maybe not.
Who are you?
I'm Donna Moss. I came in to volunteer, and the woman assigned me to you.
Which woman?
Betsy.
You mean Margaret?
Yes,
Who are you?
I'm Donna Moss. I'll be working as your assistant.
I'm gonna talk to Margaret.
Actually, Josh,
Yeah?
when I said I was assigned to you,
Yeah?
I may have been overstating it a little.
Who are you?
I'm Donna Moss. I drove here from Madison, Wisconsin.
When did your boyfriend break up with you?
What makes you think my boyfriend broke up with me?
Well, you're too old for your parents to have kicked you out of the house.
I'm here because I want to work for Bartlett. I'm a college graduate with a degree in political science and government.
Where did you graduate? Where did you graduate?
Okay, when I said I graduated,
Yeah?
I may have been overstating a little.
Look.
I was a couple of credits short.
From where?
University of Wisconsin,
And you majored in political science and government?
and sociology and psychology.
Uh-huh.
And biology for a while with a minor in French,
Okay.
and drama,
You had 5 majors and 2 minors in 4 years?
2 years.
Okay. Listen.
I had to drop out. I had to drop out.
Your boyfriend was older than you?
I think that question's of a personal nature.
Donna, you were just at my desk reading my calendar, answering my phone, and hoping I wouldn't notice that I never hired you. Your boyfriend was older?
Yes,
Law student?
medical student.
And the idea was you drop out and pay the bills till he's done with his residency.
Yes,
And did you?
yes.
And why did Dr. Freewright break up with you?
What makes you think he broke up with me?
Donna, this is a campaign for the presidency, and there's nothing I take more seriously than that. This can't be a place for people to come to find their confidence and start over.
Why not?
I'm sorry?
Why can't it be those things?
Because...
Oh, is it going to interfere with my typing?
Donna, we're picking up today and going to South Carolina. If you want to stay in the Manchester office...
I want to come to Charleston.
I can't carry you, Donna. I got a lot of guys out there not making the trip.
I'll pay my own way.
With what?
I'll sleep on the floor. I'll sell my car. Eventually, you're going to put me on salary.
Donna.
Look, I think I can be good at this. I think you might find me valuable.
Go ahead.
Bartlett for America, Josh Lyman's office. Yes. I think I'm going to have somebody from the press office get back to you if it relates to... Yes. 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 Yes.
He likes her.
I'm clapping for Janelle, I'm clapping for Brad, and I'm clapping for Aaron Sorkin, who wrote that scene, who created this series. And I wish he could be here today, because none of us would be here today were it not for Aaron. And that was, I think Janelle and Brad can tell you, that was perfect Aaron. That was classic Aaron all the way. And Janelle, the other thing it is it's a lesson about how you get started in politics. You got to be willing to sell your car and sleep on the floor.
Okay.
Janelle, you met some people who started like that, didn't you?
What's that?
You met some people who started like that after you were working on the show, and you started to meet people in that field.
Yes. In fact, when we made our first trip to Washington, or at least I made my first trip, I met a young woman, and she worked in the White House, and I think she literally worked in the office next door to the president, and she'd been there a month, and she drove her hatchback from Florida and got a job somehow. I'm not sure, and she's working. She worked there when we met her.
And Brad, it's also how you get started in show business. You got to be willing to sell the car and sleep on the floor.
And your soul.
I think the soul is up for sale in politics too, Brad.
It's funny. It reminds me because people, I'm sure, Janelle, for you too, people come up to me all the time and say the show is how they got interested in politics. And I was at the White House press corps dinner, which is kind of a dog show in Washington, and this staffer kid, kind of rumpled kid, came up and said, "Hey, you're the reason I'm in politics." And I said, "Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that." And he said, "Actually, I'm broke, I'm exhausted, and I'm never going to kiss Mary Louise Parker." He was upset.
Yeah. So, Janelle, how does it feel to know that there are still people out there watching The West Wing, watching what you did, watching how your career, the character's career, rose from that spot up to real responsibility, and they're looking at that as inspiration for going in to work in government and politics?
It's so shocking to me. It feels like a lifetime ago. So even when I see that scene, it's totally new to me. I think, what are those young people going to do next? I have no idea. But I'm so touched, and I feel so lucky, because most things out there now are such terrible garbage, and it's kind of gotten to the point. It feels really good that at least for that period we got to participate in something that had value in terms of what it was talking about, and the fact that it influences anyone positively. It's really sweet. It's very touching to me.
Brad, where did you think this show was going? You made the pilot, and so then we all went to work. Aaron hired some additional writers, me and Rick Cleveland, a bunch of others, and we started writing episodes. We started shooting them. I think we had about 5 produced before we went on the air. So we were at least 4 to 5 episodes in before we went on the air. And you don't find out what you have until you go on the air. You either are going to be out of business soon, or you're going to be in business for a while. Where did you think this show was going by the time we'd done about 3 or 4 of them?
Well, it was unnerving, because Aaron famously, he can't write unless he creates the conditions of sort of having his clothes on fire. And
I'm going to keep a straight face throughout everything he's about to say.
But famously, Scott Sassa brought Aaron in to NBC. They had picked up the show. which when we did the pilot, I think we all thought this is the kind of thing it's too good to get picked up.
You would watch it, but who else would watch
Right.
it? Right.
And Scott Sassa said, so we're picking it up. We want to know what you have in mind for, the season, what sort of arcs you have. And Aaron famously said, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, that might have been it.
Which is what he said the first day the writers' room was convened. Also.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that created the sense that Aaron really did not know where it was going to go. Aaron he'd done a couple of years on Sports Night, but he'd never really done a long run of a show.
Right.
And it's one of the exciting things about doing a show that goes on and on, as you discover. I mean, there was some episode where didn't my sister die in a fire or something? I mean, I certainly wasn't playing
I
that
had nothing
in the
to
pilot.
do with that.
Ask
But you-
the people
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
They know.
Right. That's right. I've been given the signal that he's here. Well, he's here in spirit, but he's actually also on the phone. If I say Richard Schiff, can you hear me? Let's see if there's an answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I hear you.
yes. Oh, the glory of telecommunications.
Yeah. Can we get some guys over from MIT to figure out a better connection?
This is, you know what? They're all getting your jokes, so it's working. They hear you. Richard, here's what I'd like to do. I would like to show a scene of you with Martin Sheen, which I actually think goes to something Brad just said, which is when we kind of started writing the show, we really weren't sure what we had. But I think there's a scene in episode 5 that you did with Martin that gets down to what the essence of the show really was. And this is what we were ultimately really trying to do with the series. And I know it's what Aaron was trying to do all along, whether he could articulate it to executives or not. So that's scene number 3. If we can hit that scene and show that now, that would be great.
So I guess we haven't been getting along too well lately, have we, sir?
No, I guess not.
I've been irritating you.
Yes.
Was David Rosen your first choice for my job?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we had this little talk, sir. I feel a lot better. Thank you.
We were up all night on that one, Toby. Me and Leo and Josh. They were screaming at me, Governor, for God's sakes, it's gotta be Toby. It's gotta be Toby. But I held my ground and we went to David Rosen, and Rosen said he wanted to take a partnership at Solomon Brothers. Thank God. I couldn't live without you, Toby. I mean it. I'd be in the tall grass. I'd be in the weeds. I know I disappoint you sometimes. I mean, I can sense your disappointment. And I only get mad because I know you're right a lot of the times. But you are not the kid in the class with his hand up and whatever it was you said to CJ. You are a wise and brilliant man, Toby. The other night when we were playing basketball, did you mean what you said? My demons were shouting down the better angels in my brain?
Yes, sir, I did.
You think that's what's stopping me from greatness?
Yes.
I suppose you're right.
Tell you what, though, sir. In a battle between a president's demons and his better angels, for the first time in a long while, I think we might just have ourselves a fair fight.
Thank you, Toby. Now go away.
Richard, I think that last line that Aaron gave you was the essence of the show.
Repeat it for me.
Sorry. It's when you say to Martin that in the battle between his demons and his better angels, you think we finally have a fair fight. There's a president who's actually having a fair fight there.
Yeah, and I think the key line, but now that I'm thinking about it for the first time, in that scene that kind of defines Aaron, and I think what everything that we did was when he asked me, are our better angels, are our demons shouting down the better angels? And that's the theme, I think, for Aaron, and I think it's the theme for the show, that these very flawed people were trying to do mythic, heroic work, and whether our better sides can win out over our demons, I think is very much a part of what he was doing.
You know, Brad, when I was looking at clips to bring here today, and I found that one, I heard that line and those lines as I'd never heard them before. Because when you're in that crush of doing 22 episodes, the way I was either writing this or consuming this material was literally line by line. It was just, okay, that's a good line. Or in the room, when you guys would do the read, oh, that line works. The significance of lines never quite landed on me the way I think they did on the audience.
Yeah, it's shocked me. I have not gone back and watched, and I missed a big bunch of them because I knew how it was going to end. And I think we all have reservations about watching ourselves act. But there was an incredibly hot period, I thought, for Aaron, certainly in the second year, where we were just getting Two Cathedrals. Remember that read-through? I mean,
yeah. That was the season finale of season 2.
It was an output of complex writing that I have never seen anybody do. I mean, we were getting what would be these spectacular plays, every 2 weeks. It was astonishing.
Richard, I asked a question earlier of Brad about before we got the show on the air, once we'd produced about 4 of them before we went and got feedback from an audience. Where did you think this show was going? Did you have a feeling you were going to be working there a long time, or that you'd be looking for work pretty soon?
When I read the pilot, apparently I was alone in this, but I thought this show's going to last 2 terms. I had no doubt about it. I had no doubt in my mind. I didn't know at what level of success. I didn't know if it was going to be a top 10 show or somewhere in the middle of the pack. But I just figured it would last 8 years. I didn't know that we were starting in the middle of our second year. So as it turned out, it lasted 7 years, the full 2 terms. But I wasn't keeping track once we aired of how successful we were. I was shocked at the end of the season when I went back out into the world how many people were affected as deeply as they were, and how much of a success we were. I had no idea at the end of the year that we were that successful.
Janelle, you know that you are a legend in Hollywood casting because of The West Wing, and that's because you were in the pilot in what was a very small part in the pilot, just a couple of lines.
It wasn't very small.
Well, okay. All right, but it was not a recurring character.
It was petite.
Right.
It was petite, but it had all its parts.
It was not
really
not a series regular deal and all that stuff. And what happened was the writers saw the pilot, saw your performance. Aaron loved your performance. And Aaron and we kept writing to you, handing you more and more, so that when we got to the end of the first season, it turned out you were in every episode, and it was time for a big promotion. And I want to show a scene now that shows how this relationship that you all just saw begin in New Hampshire, how it evolved in the White House. This is scene 2. Let's take a look at that.
What do you mean we're not on Meet the Press? No. Call him back. Talk to Elise Bain. Tell her they're not bumping us for Ricky Rafferty.
Hang up.
Tell her the congressman is available tomorrow only. Rafferty can wait.
Hang up
Just
now.
keep your pants on. Call me back. I'm gonna put a hit out on Ricky Rafferty.
I need to talk to you, not with a million people around.
Is our relationship about to change?
Rafferty put out the full text of the health plan. Annabeth had a copy. Look at page 3.
Obliterate the money laundering middleman between you and your doctor. Why didn't every article lead with
It
this?
wasn't in the first speech. They released the whole plan today. Guarantees them another 3 days of coverage. Look how it's structured.
It's structured like Jed Bartlett structured it before we forced him to cut it out of his plan.
Rafferty's got to have someone who worked on the president's first healthcare initiative. That was you, Toby, Sam, Melanie, Ken.
You missed one.
No, who'd I miss?
The president.
So the way here, this is something a lot of people in LA know, but in casting directors now will say to people in a pilot or in an episode of TV when they're trying to get them to do this one-time part, a few pages. I can't call it a small part because Janelle's here. When they're trying to get them to do that part, they will say to them, and the actor might think, no, I want something bigger. They'll say to them, this is the Janelle Maloney part. This is the Janelle Maloney part. And what they mean is it's going to become what you just saw. Big, series regular, Emmy nominated. Janelle, what was that ride like, going from you don't know whether you're in next week's episode to coming up into the regular cast?
Well, I knew from the very, very beginning, because the first day of the first show, I was one of the actors. I think I did one of the first scenes on the first day with John Spencer, and he said to me, we did one little scene, and he said to me, "Kid, you are going to be here till the curtain comes down." And I felt like they were going to have to work very hard to get rid of me, and I really wanted to stay, and I really was very dedicated. Every line I had, everything to just shining as much as I could. And Brad helped me a lot because there was a lot of pressure on me to not do that, because no one's really inviting you to do that, and I sort of invited myself, and so it was very gratifying. But I really felt like I was part of the regular main important cast, because maybe I'm crazy, but I did from the very beginning. I really, really did. So it felt very natural to be a part of it. But looking back, also, it just was such a heady, so exciting, and so much fun. But it was, to me, it was just as fun the third day of shooting as it was the last day of shooting. We just had a really wonderful, wonderful time.
And go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say, I think it's really an important part of what makes Aaron or a lot of great writers on television great, is that they are able to see the actors and then write towards them and exploit them, pick up on the actor and what they can do, so that they're not really imposing on it. I mean, very strongly, I think that certainly happened with Richard. I feel like it happened with me. I feel like
all of us.
It happened with all of us, with John Spencer. There's this ability to, also Aaron really loves actors. Some writers, David Mamet, don't.
Richard,
I think
let's get Richard in on that. Richard,
Yeah.
go ahead. The way
I'm just looking at the website, Revisiting the West Wing, and noticed that I'm not credited. So I just wanted to. Now my West Wing days are really coming back.
all right. Richard, talk about the way this writing unfolded to you as you saw your character unfolding week to week in these scripts?
Well, Brad said it very, very well. That Aaron he adores actors, and I had a really wonderful relationship with him in terms of give and take, and finding what was right for Toby. And people don't know this, but the other actor that was down to the wire for that part, which I didn't know until a few years later, he came up to me and said he heard my test audition at the network, and he thought that after it was over, he was listening at the door, that he got the part hands down because he couldn't hear me speak. And that actor turned out to be Eugene Levy. Eugene Levy is obviously a brilliant comic actor and would have been a fantastic Toby, I think, but obviously completely different than the path that I took with him. And I think that's a credit to Aaron that he was able to go with the instincts of the actor. And for me, I looked at the ensemble and I looked at the comedy that he was writing, and I looked at the group and the music that we were playing. And in my mind, I kind of thought, we need a bassoon. We need a kind of a deeper tone in there somewhere. And I kind of went darker with that character, and it happened to be, parallel to stuff that was going on in my life, and we kind of forged a character out of all those, out of that. And that Aaron kept playing to that, and I kept playing to that. I think was a credit to how he works with actors. Brad is generally funny and positive and optimistic, and I think Josh became more like that. You know what I mean?
Well, let's take a look at that dark and hard to hear Toby Ziegler.
Let's get ready to mumble.
And this is
Brad, how long have you been waiting to say that?
Yeah,
Let's
he
see.
thought of that on the plane ride. And
apparently
that's
about
a joke
12
that's
years.
15 years waiting to
Yes.
happen.
This is Richard. This is another scene of Toby with the president. It's in the first season. It's an episode that Aaron and I wrote about the death penalty. And I remember pitching this to Aaron because I knew there was some federal death penalty cases. There was one in particular that was ripening to the point where there might be that White House moment for the first time since the 60s where it's 1 minute to midnight and it's up to the president whether this federal prisoner is executed or not. And I wanted the show to get there before it happened in real life, and then it ended up not happening in real life. But it was great because when I pitched it to Aaron, I said, here's the thing, and I did a real quick version, maybe 10 seconds longer than I just did. And he said, he jumped in before I said what he then said for me. He said, yeah, okay, great, but we got to kill the guy, which I loved because I am a permanent opponent to the death penalty in its every form, in every case. Aaron's against the death penalty too. And what interested us as writers, as dramatists, was how does an honorable man make a decision in this arena that we disagree with? And Aaron took it in a brilliant direction where I would not, which included a lot of religion. And Toby's character ends up going to temple and hearing something from his rabbi about it, and Toby goes into the Oval Office at the last minute hoping to change what's going to happen here. And let's take a look at that scene. It is scene number 4.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How was your trip?
Fine. What do you need?
I had a strange experience this weekend. One of the PDs on the cruise case, I guess, trying the things you do when you're desperate, he went and spoke to my rabbi.
Jewish law doesn't prohibit it. The commandment does not say thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder.
I know, but the fact is that even 2,000 years ago, the rabbis of the Talmud couldn't stomach it. I mean, they weren't about to rewrite the Torah, but they came up with another way. They came up with legal restrictions which make our criminal justice system look. They made it impossible for the state to punish someone by killing him.
We make it very hard to kill anybody in this country, Toby.
It should be impossible,
But it's not.
but it should be.
Hey,
Hey, what's going on?
Toby went to shul.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Richard, you were the rabbi of the West Wing.
So I heard. Yeah, that was a really important episode. I remember two things about that episode. One was Carl Malden came in to speak as the priest to Martin in the scene, to the president in the scene in the Oval Office, and I happened to be around, and I said hello to Carl Malden, who of course is a great hero of all of ours, and he was holding this little Bible, which his character was going to use in that scene. And I said to him, man, that's an old-looking Bible. He said, you know where this Bible's from? And I said, no. He said, On the Waterfront.
Wow.
It was the same Bible he used when he shot On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando with Elia Kazan. And I just thought that's a nice little tidbit of history. But the other thing was, I remember there was a scene that I was watching, sitting along with Tommy, with Dulé, with Charlie. And I think Charlie was a relatively new character as well, wasn't he, at that point?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was, yeah.
And he had, and you know, Charlie's mother was a cop who had been murdered. And the president asked Charlie at one point, if you had a chance, would you get even with your mother's murderer? And he said, if I had the chance, I'd kill him, or something like that. And then there was a follow-up line, which he said, but then again, I don't have that right, or something like that. And I begged Aaron and Tommy to lose that second line and to leave with the audience that Charlie's carrying revenge in his heart. That's stronger than any other rational thing. I just thought it made the character more interesting, and it also made the debate more interesting. And it goes along the lines of what you're saying, that the president not saving the guy at the end was so important in the telling of that story, to make it truthful and to make it more powerful.
Yeah, for me, at that point in the show anyway, my political opinions didn't interest me at all. I was always interested in exploring others. Later in the later years of the show, I started to write scenes that actually were my view. But Brad, what about your politics in the show? Did you feel, oh, okay, this is good because this is basically representing my politics, or did it matter to you as an actor?
It's funny because people always say, could you do this show about a Republican administration? And my joke answer is always no, because Republicans aren't funny, and watching them flirt makes you queasy.
I think there might be a comment about that later.
There might be a comment about that later. But the real reason is there's something about having people who work in the White House who don't believe in government. You couldn't have the music swell at the end. We'd be high-fiving each other, saying, we got rid of food stamps. Mm-hmm. We're drilling on protected land. I don't think it would have worked. I totally agreed with the politics on this show, and I totally agreed with what I felt was Josh's kind of pragmatic, how dirty do your feet have to get before you disappear in the mud in order to get an inch of what you want done? I thought that was like a heroic political ground game. And it always drives me nuts on the left, because I feel like on the left, we want a savior to give us everything.
I think we've done enough here to stimulate some questions. The microphones are open for questions. I'm going to show you one more scene because it's relevant to what Brad just said. It's the last clip we'll show because I want to open it up to discussion now to anyone you want to ask questions of or make comments about. I guess the rule is you must ask a question, right? There has to be, Brad, this is great. There has to be a question mark at the end of what they say. It's not like one of those things where they just can get up and give speeches.
Where they can just say we don't
like your acting.
But
I want to show you a scene. Brad's joke about you couldn't do this for a Republican. One of the secret truths of the West Wing Writers' Room is that we were planning the possibility of writing the show for a Republican president in the 7th season of the show, when Alan Alda was running for president as the Republican candidate. And we'd actually come pretty close to the decision that that is what we were going to do if we chose to continue the show into an 8th season, which ultimately we didn't.
But that's like the Pentagon running thermonuclear war options, right?
Yes, exactly. But that plan changed for a couple of reasons, and one of them was a tragic reason, which was the death of one of our cast members, John Spencer, who you're about to see in this scene. He did stunning work in the show, won an Emmy, as did Brad, as did Richard, was just amazing in every scene, riveting at every read-through. Every time he said a line in any form, he was astounding. And he was on the Jimmy Smits side of the campaign. And we then had to actually write the character's death into the series, and the sequence of negative blows to one side was becoming relentless, and that made us all switch back toward, okay, wait a minute now, we can't then deliver them this other political death blow after what's happened on that side of it. But this is the Republican who we were contemplating writing a show around, and it's a Republican that Trey Grayson knows. They're hard to find now, but it is exactly the kind of Republican that I knew when I was working in the United States Senate in the 90s. I think they're pretty much extinct now for reasons we can discuss later. But here is Josh going to visit this Republican senator with a scheme of making him the UN ambassador, because this will help the Democrats in a variety of ways. He's also a good choice for the job. And let's take a look at what happens. This is scene 5.
Every White House forgets about checks and balances. You guys are no different.
Checks are fine. It's the witch hunts I got a problem with.
You need Cordovan for those. Pick up a brush. You're not leaving this room with shoes like that. Here's another check you won't like. I'm gonna hold another hearing on your man Margutian taking a Marine helicopter to play golf in Florida.
Come on, that was over a year ago. We fired the guy.
No, this was another incident the year before that one.
You really think the American people care about this?
Hope not. But I got a dozen members of my committee who do. I think it's a good way to get on TV. You think I like investigating high school stuff like this?
Fooled me.
Have I ever campaigned saying I was going to be the best investigator in the Senate? Of course not. This isn't what I came here to do. I came here to make this a better government, to make this a better country, and I just wish you guys would stop serving up these goofy things for us to investigate.
We've run a pretty tight ship.
Yes, you have, which is why they had to reach back a couple of years to find something new to yell about. But just do me a big favor, will you? No more flag burnings in the White House. I've had 4 nuts demand hearings on that one already.
So?
So I told them that the United States Senate does not investigate what happens at kids' birthday parties. Not as long as I have anything to say about it.
You decided if you're gonna run for another term?
Yep. Flying home tonight. Making my announcement tomorrow. Why, you want to make me a retirement offer?
Yeah, I happen to have one on me.
What have you got?
Help the president make the world a better place.
UN. That's tempting. It's very tempting. But that's not the job I want.
Well, the president didn't send me with a menu of jobs, just this one.
The president can't give me the job I want.
Which one?
His.
You're running?
Starting tomorrow. You missed a spot on the heel.
Okay, John Spencer's not in that scene. He was in a scene attached to it, but I just want to run one more scene as you come to these microphones, forming your questions in your mind, because this scene gives us John Spencer, it gives us Allison Janney, it gives us people who should be here, Martin Sheen. So let's look at scene number 6, and then questions will be taken immediately after that.
I don't remember the exact words I used. Weather. I think you said we could weather this.
How is that different from Beat the Rap?
It's completely different.
It's not different enough for me to go out there and fight about it. Did you tell him he shouldn't have used White House phones?
No, I said, didn't you know the White House keeps records of phone calls?
Oh, great. That's completely different. Did you tell him we could say this is a right-wing conspiracy against the White House?
Absolutely not.
Did you tell him he could deny the whole thing?
I asked him if he was in a position to deny it.
Okay, couple more things. He says you pressed him for details and he said it's none of your business?
Yes.
Leo, did you say the woman was a cheap whore and did you suggest she had other customers?
No, I said she was a cheap person because she sold her story. What kind of person does something like that?
And Mr. President, did you say we've got to start attacking her tonight, right now?
No.
Anything like that?
I think I said something like, if we're going to get him through this, we're going to have to start right now. And I said, since she sold her story, she's not going to have a lot of credibility.
Anything else about the woman?
Nothing.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'm done.
You think he's getting ready to run?
Made some calls. He hasn't made any moves on staff yet. Got some calls out to the usual suspects in Iowa and New Hampshire. I'm waiting to hear
He's
back.
writing a book.
A book?
Greg Brock told me. Big advance.
Then he's definitely running.
He's gonna make the book the final word on the scandal, hold his wife's hand on Oprah, and catch the next flight to Iowa.
And rewrite history with the book. His own version of every conversation we've ever had with him.
Just one of many scenes showing you a very simple thing, the difficulty of trying to tell the truth publicly under that kind of microscope. But I want to get out of the way now, and I just want to point to people to ask questions, beginning right there.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us.
I believe the rule is, Trey, you identify yourself. Is that right? You have to give your real name? Real name. Oh. IDs? They have to show IDs? No? Okay. Real name, affiliation, and then a question mark at the end of the words that come after the affiliation.
Great. My name is Harold. I'm a first-year law student at Harvard Law School. And one knock that constantly gets made against Aaron Sorkin is his portrayal and writing of women. And so I was wondering if any of you wanted to weigh in on that, especially in light of the recent popularity of another White House-based show that features what many people consider to be a very powerful woman of color.
I think I should answer.
The most womanly among us wants to answer Janelle, but the whole room just turned to you for this question of Aaron writing women.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You know, I don't know. His words are brilliant, and you're a woman that's doing them. And he's not sexist. He loves women. He's having a good time with a lot of the gender cliches, and I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to say. It was the role of a lifetime. It went up, down, side, backwards, forwards. It touched on everything you'd want to touch on as a woman. I mean, certainly in West Wing, you're not going to find anybody more badass than C.J. Craig. So I don't know. If I look at some of his more recent stuff, and it's a little different. It's a little more flirty, and the women seem a little more coquettish and a lot more glamorous and sexy.
Cut it out. No, they don't.
No, you know
Don't
what
be
I mean.
silly.
I think that has a lot to do with how television has changed. But I think Aaron writes great female characters. I would do it again in a heartbeat. So that's for me. Other people might have another opinion.
Let's check if any other women in the cast have.
Listen,
Brad liked those women just fine.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I mean, I agree. I don't. Name a stronger female character than C.J. Craig, and the brains. The joke of our relationship was that I was a emotionally constipated, nutcase who was grounded by Donna's wisdom. Mm-hmm. So he was certainly looking at what from the outside was a subservient role, but it was clearly undermining it.
Right here.
I'm Alex Smith. I'm a student at the college, and if I can have a single moment of gushing, the greatest compliment I've ever received.
Well, it depends who you're going to gush.
Unfortunately, it's going to be everyone but you.
Make it quick.
Sounds good.
Make it quick.
But my question is for you.
Put a question mark at the end of the gush.
The greatest compliment I've ever received is that I am close enough to Josh Lyman. The greatest compliment I've ever given to someone is that they're like Donna Moss. And between Toby Ziegler and Sam Seaborn in a fight, I always pick Toby Ziegler. So I hope that covers everyone except for you. But Mr. O'Donnell, as you mentioned previously, part of what you were trying to do in the show was write things before they happened in real time. What was that experience like, trying or understanding that you could have some sort of influence based on the popularity of the show on how people viewed what was actually happening in the real world?
You know, I could be wrong about this, but it never occurred to me that we would have the slightest influence. And,
Absolutely.
To me, this was TV drama. And it was like asking, well, what influence on jurisprudence do you think Law and Order is going to have? That's the way it felt to me. We're in the same business, and we have the same objective, which is the best drama. We did not set out to teach lessons. It so happened that when we got into certain issues, we were going to have to teach you something about it. I had the honor of being the first, and I may remain, the only primetime dramatist to write the debt ceiling into scripts on TV. And no one knew what that was, no one. And so we had to do a little teaching there. But my intent and Aaron's intent, whenever we were doing those things, was not to teach you about the debt ceiling, was to have fun in this moment. And because they work here, the joke that Richard Schiff is going to do is about the debt ceiling. And so that's the way we approached it as writers. And I'd like to ask Richard, as an actor, did you feel like you were being given the job of teacher once in a while in these scripts?
Well, it's a great question, by the way. I was early on in the show on Bill O'Reilly's show for reasons I can't explain, and he said, do you guys, does Aaron particularly, but do you guys have an agenda? Do you have some purpose in affecting the politics of this country? And my response was, Aaron is, and we all are artists, and artists have point of view and sometimes social and political point of views, and that's it. I've since changed my mind. After the 2008 election, where I went around the country to the Democratic side, to all the debates leading up to the primary, I was surrounded by Obama Army foot soldiers, all of whom would say, "You're the reason I got into this. You're the reason I'm doing this." And if you look at that election, it's the caucus states in which the foot soldiers made a difference that gave Obama the nomination. And I actually think that we had a great effect on how people look at policy, especially young people. While we were doing the show in 2004, Bush actually won the election, and he actually won by a few points. So I thought we were having a negative effect on politics. But I think over the long run, I think we did do some teaching, and I think Aaron was aware of that.
Go ahead. Could I just say something? I think that Aaron used to always say to us that, and I think it's true, part of the thing that made the show work, I think, for Aaron was the collision of this dry arena with a writer who is a desperate traditional showman who wants to hold your attention and make you laugh and give you a really full emotional experience at the end of the show. These traditional showbiz values colliding with that material. I think he was shocked. There came a time where, like, we got 20 million people to get the bullet points on the argument about head counts versus computer modeling for the decennial census. Okay. Now, we had to get Rob Lowe late in the process, but it was this powerful...
On the show, as an entertainment diversion to this lesson, is what he means.
we got lobbied by lobbyists. Lobbyists would come up to me and
Yeah.
want to get their issues on the show. It was strange.
Well, my favorite thing about that is I once wrote a scene about base closing commission, which no one understands, and I used an upstate New York base that I used to fight when I was working for the New York Senator to keep open, and Josh Lyman is in a meeting talking about how you can close down that Fort Drum in upstate New York, and then the then new senator from New York, Hillary Clinton, writes Josh Lyman a letter lobbying him to not close down that base. Go ahead.
Well, wait, I got a story there. When we did the episode of Toby solving Social Security, I had you, Lawrence, and every other consultant we had on the show come and try to explain to me what all these numbers mean. You made a valiant attempt. I still don't understand it, but I acted as if I solved Social Security, and I got a letter from delineating 10 reasons. Thank you for Toby trying, but delineating 10 reasons why my plan won't work. Signed, Senator from New York, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yes, exactly. We have another question.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Quigley-Jones. I'm a Middle Eastern Studies master's student. I was wondering how you guys felt about House of Cards, and also how you feel about the rise of what's been called stupid political dramas like Scandal or Veep or whatever. Do you feel superior being like the first West Wing?
What about Bradley Whitford gives you the feeling that he could possibly feel superior to any other artist's work?
It's the polo shirt, actually. It's the polo top.
Brad, I think that was directly to you, that question.
It's everyone.
No, listen, I love House of Cards. You know, it's funny because the show would be accused often of it being a fantasy. I got in trouble once for saying, because The Sopranos was on, then I said, no, the real fantasy is a hitman in therapy, you know? Not that there's a bunch of guys surrounding a president who really believe in him. The point of view of House of Cards, it feels a little sinister to me. I mean, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch, but I don't. That's sort of brazen manipulation of the system in a cynical way. Is not as realistic to me as I think what Aaron was trying to write.
Now, Janelle and Richard, I have every intention of ducking this question myself, comparing our work to other shows, but if either one of you would like to get in there and talk about whether you feel superior to other shows based in Washington. Janelle, feeling superior?
No, you know, I feel like first of all, I love House of Cards, and I think it's like this dark, nasty West Wing. I think it's a lot of fun. I really like it. But I feel like it was so superior to 90% of things that are on television or in the movie theaters now that I just feel kind of shocked that we all got to do it. Because if we were going to try to do this again, it wouldn't even get on the air. I saw John Wells recently, and he said if he was trying to make West Wing today, he wouldn't get any actor through the network. He wouldn't get the show made or bought ever. And so I just feel like we were on it. We did a superior, wonderful show. But I mean, God bless all those other shows. It's great. I love Kerry Washington. They're just all doing a different thing, you know.
And to John Wells, it's worth noting, he was the executive producer. He had been running ER for years when Aaron Sorkin partnered with him as an executive producer to get The West Wing done. West Wing got on the air because of the muscle of John Wells. The network actually rejected the pilot script when they got it from Aaron, and John stayed with it, and a year later got the network to make the pilot. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I just want you to know the idiotic note. John was so important in this show.
For all 7 years.
For using his schwing to protect Aaron. It goes to a real problem in Hollywood. They should be terrified, all those development people in Hollywood. If anybody had any idea that The West Wing was going to be a quarter as successful as it was, Aaron would not have written it, this cast would not have been in it. Sopranos, if anybody had any idea that thing was going to work, David Chase would not have been in it. We never would have met James Gandolfini. Breaking Bad, if anybody had any idea that thing was going to work, Vince wouldn't have written it, Brian wouldn't have been in it. House of Cards.
Meaning the executives would have
developed.
stuffed it with stars.
Yeah, or they would have, non-storytellers would have gotten in there. The note that they gave Aaron, which made Aaron go, I don't want to ever take a note again, was in the pilot, Rob and I were monitoring a raft of Haitian refugees. And the big note from development at NBC was, why do we care about these guys? I mean, I think we need to get Brad and Rob in the water, saving them, like Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel in a Speedo, like saving a Haitian baby. And it was like idiotic. And John protected us from that crap.
Here's a very quick one. I left The West Wing for 2 years. After the first 2 years, created another show about a United States senator starring Josh Brolin. We were about 3 episodes into the writing. We hadn't yet gotten on the air. And the network loved the first 2 scripts. The 3rd script, I get a call from the very top of the network, and I can tell he's in the car. You can hear that, and he says, you know, there's just too much politics in this show. There's just too much politics in this show. Now, when you're doing a political show and the network says to you there's too much politics in this show, and this is the only show business advice I'm going to give you, you know what you say? Here's what you say. You say, uh-huh. That's all you say. You didn't say anything. You didn't say, okay, I get it. Richard, do you have you been watching any of the other Washington-based shows? Do you have any comment about them?
You know, we're going to the University of Chicago in a couple of weeks, and Lawrence, I hope you can make it. I think Brad's going to do a similar symposium, but specifically about this subject. I had not seen either House of Cards or Scandal until they asked me to come there. And I have to go because my son's going to that school, and that's why they asked me. So I just now started to watch Scandal. I saw the pilot when it came out, and I thought, oh, this is Macbeth, I get it. And I thought it was really well done and so on, but I had no real interest to continue watching it. Since the last couple of weeks, I've seen about 5 or 6 of them, and I think it's brilliant. I specifically love Robin Wright, who because she is finding the gray matter between the morality of that show and her own conscience, which I don't think any other character is doing, and I find her particularly fascinating. But you know, the show seems to me to be an anti-West Wing. You know, I mean, it seems to be the absolute opposite, and very legitimately. You know, I think we were a fantasy, as Brad says, and I think one of the remarkable things and achievements that Aaron was able to accomplish, and we all, I guess, were able to accomplish, is that we made good people interesting and dramatic. And I think that's very, very hard to do. Bad people are much more interesting dramatically because they create conflict just by being alive. And that's Kevin Spacey's character. So there's all sorts of great, dynamic, Shakespearean, soap opera moments because this guy is ambitious and he's willing to kill. And we weren't. So our problems were much more difficult and therefore much more difficult for you writers to create great stories. And that we were successful at that, I think, is remarkable.
Yeah, here's how difficult that was. I remember walking across the Warner Brothers lot once we'd written 4 of these, and we had just heard the read-through of the 4th from these great actors. And I said to Rick Cleveland, who's one of the first-year writers on the show, okay, so by now, meaning by the time the audience has seen all 4 of these, they're on to us. They've now seen 4 hours of this. and nothing happens. There's no baby dying in the emergency room. No one murders anybody. Nobody's facing the death penalty in a courtroom. Not one of the conventions of hour-long television drama exists in this show, and they may have thought it's kind of interesting because of these rooms it happens in, but right about here, episode 4, is where we lose them. This is where they give up because they know that none of those things that they see in all the other shows are going to happen here. And we will never do those things. And the audience showed up about 2 weeks later in big numbers. Now, because I did not take the moderating course when I went to this college, I didn't know until right now that there's 2 microphones up here on the second level that I've ignored the whole time. I just thought you were so interested you were standing. But it's your turn to talk, and it's been your turn to talk for like 20 minutes. Go ahead.
My name is Ben Bolger, and I'm a Harvard alum. I was very curious the dynamic between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. After President Obama won, Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State. It was very interesting as the West Wing series began to wind down, the tension between Jimmy Smits and Alan Alda kind of played itself out in a curiously similar way. I'm wondering if you could talk about the development and discussions that you had that might have foreshadowed real life in that regard.
Well, the episode you're talking about is Jimmy has won the presidency. Alan Alda is the defeated Republican candidate. And it's always fascinated me how these people, when they lose, they just drop off the planet. I mean, I've never been with a presidential candidate after they've lost, so I don't know what their lives are like. And I had to imagine that. And we started working down that road. That episode begins with Alan Alda just, a couch potato, like can't leave his house. He's just totally depressed and doesn't know how to function. And it ends with Jimmy offering him Secretary of State because he believes he's the best person for the job. It's something you've seen since then. Barack Obama offering a Republican Secretary of Defense twice now. And it was something we hadn't seen in a while at the time that I wrote it, but I knew it was a possibility. And it made just perfect sense for this. And it was one of the very few things that I did in the show where I got a very specific response the next day from old hands in Washington who really loved that. They just loved because they knew that's actually the way it's supposed to work. Right there.
Hi, my name is David. Oh, is this on? Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is David Clifton. I'm a freshman at the college. This is for anyone who wants to answer it. I was just wondering, what did you do to prepare for your roles, and how much access did you have to the White House and like the people you were actually portraying, and what was that like?
Let's go with Brad to start with.
I have to say, George Stephanopoulos' book, All Too Human, should be renamed Everything Brad Needs to Know to Do This Part. I mean, it had just come out, and it was sort of a perfect, a perfect just basket of information. As the show became successful, I find it so bizarre, the access that Hollywood gets you is, in doing research for things, I've been in surgery, because the doctor's like, oh, you're in Hollywood. Yeah, come in. I've sat next to judges when they sentence people to life in prison. Oh, Hollywood, come here. It's unbelievable. There was a funny story. Josh Bolton, we were shooting at the White House, and I knew the Secret Service guys, and I'm going in and out the gate, and Josh Bolton, the real Deputy Chief of Staff, is coming into work. They wave me through, and they stop Josh, and they search. It's like, Hollywood, come on in. But we got a lot of help. But the thing that we were focused on is the acting. The research.
We were trying to learn our lines, Brad.
Yes. Yeah. We had to memorize those lines first.
Richard, do you want to talk about your preparation for the role and what you knew about Washington before you took the role, and then what you learned?
Sure. The only time I had seen Washington before was 1969 or 1970 when I went down as a young teenager to demonstrate against the war moratorium. I had only seen Washington through the fog of tear gas and had no idea that it was actually a beautiful city till we went back to shoot there many years later. So it's interesting that what different books affect our characters because it's appropriate, I think. I read Stephanopoulos' book, and the book that influenced me more was David Gergen's book. And it's funny because I think Toby is probably more like David Gergen and Josh more like Stephanopoulos. All the books were great. Some of the films about the making of the Clinton campaign, that film was very helpful. And we had great access to anyone we wanted to get to, as Brad said. But the most important thing that was said to me that defined my character was having a conversation with Dee Dee Myers, and who had lasted about 6 months as the first press secretary with Clinton. And she told me the story where she was in the Oval Office as a senior advisor and had a very important, a very strong opinion about something, which I don't even remember what it was. And she got to the president agreed with her. And the next day, she saw headlines in every newspaper on the newsstand from all over the world with her opinion as the headline. You know, not stated as her opinion, but stated as the president's policy. And I thought, as she said, oh my God, I just then realized the power of my position and its burden. And that landed on my shoulders very, very heavily. And I realized if it was me, if I had this responsibility, carrying around the burden of people's lives on my shoulders, it would make me very heavy. It's one of the reasons why Toby got a little bit dark and felt burdened all the time, was because of that conversation with Dee Dee. If I walked around with whether people lived or died, whether we sent them to war or not, whether they were able to eat that night, whether they were able to stay in their homes or not, it would make it a very, very long and difficult day for me. And so it affected Toby very deeply.
Janelle, did anyone you met in the real White House in any way give you a key to your character?
You know, it wasn't somebody that I met. It was a story that Aaron told me early on, which was, which it's funny, I had already decided this when I auditioned for the part, in a way. But he said that he said, you know, I met George Stephanopoulos' assistant, and when he met her, he said, so you work for the president? And she said, no, I don't work for the president, I work for George. And I thought, oh, okay, there you go. That I could put that in my pocket and carry that through 8 years. Because it was, I think, such a success in the show, my character was because it was so uniquely personal. I mean, all the characters had these personal elements, but this particular character, she really wasn't really about politics as much as she was about her boss and a certain fairness. So, and you really needed the character because she was learning on the job, learning on her feet. So it was pretty easy for me because I didn't have to come in as these guys did with this idea that I was very, that my character was super knowledgeable and kind of had this background. So, you know what I mean, Lawrence? It was
Yes,
just
I
like
do,
a little
yeah.
bit easier.
It was great to have someone who we had to explain things to at first, but the learning curve, if you watch the learning curve of Donna, it's like a rocket, it's straight up. She's explaining very quickly. Go ahead, right there.
Hi, my name is Jake, and I'm a junior at the college. And I guess the other main knock against The West Wing was that it was too idealistic, or that its characters were too idealistic, or that things work out too well in a Washington where things very rarely work out well. And I'm thinking especially of Toby's speech to the congressman, who's also a history teacher, about the Three-Fifths Compromise. And so I was wondering, in the writer's room, how do you go about balancing those speeches that melt the hearts of the audience with trying to keep it a realistic portrayal of Washington, which very rarely melts?
Well, I'll tell you something. It was very difficult to do because one basic reason of that is the actors were so great. I mean, you look at that scene we just showed you with Toby and the president. It's about Toby's disappointment in the president, and nobody notices that because the audience isn't catching that. It's because by this time the audience loves this guy who's president. and the audience loves this guy who's talking to him, who's disappointed in him. And there's nothing you can do about the charisma of actors. Coppola talked about this when he made The Godfather. He said, I thought I was making a movie about these bad guys. I didn't realize they were going to fall in love with Marlon Brando, and they're going to fall in love with Pacino because of this amazing chemistry and charisma that they have. But that was pretty much impossible to overcome. There's a question right behind you, and that's going to be...
Lawrence,
go ahead,
I
Richard. Go ahead.
as well.
Go ahead,
Okay?
Richard.
I always respond to that by asking people to look at the accomplishments, the actual accomplishments of the Bartlett administration.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why Toby was disappointed with the president on a regular basis was that I would push for that storyline. I would push for the storyline of Toby going. At one point, I think there was a speech with he and Leo where he goes, "Where's our legacy? How are we going to leave? Where's our great society? Where's our New Deal?" If you look at what we actually accomplished, it isn't a lot. As Lawrence says, the show is about disappointment and about compromise more than it was about victory. All we achieved was putting a Hispanic in the Supreme Court, some vague Social Security thing, and not a lot of whole else. The rest was just putting it together with Band-Aids and glue.
Yeah, there's just one more question coming. I'm just going to add one thing about this. That scene we showed you about Josh and Donna when Donna pulls them into the closet, they're talking about a health care plan that the president abandoned, just dropped, that was a kind of good, solid health care plan, and this guy was part of guiding him to dropping it and giving up on it. And so I don't know that you could have asked for more realism in that moment, in my view, but the audience wasn't catching all these realism points that I was making sure were in there because these guys aren't miracle workers. Go ahead.
By the way, in 5 episodes of House of Cards, Kevin Spacey's characters had more victories than 7 years of Toby.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. This is going to be the last question.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm a senior at the college. I'm just wondering what all of your experiences were in the seasons after Aaron and Tommy left the show, if there was like a change you saw as actors or as a writer, and how the show was able to carry on after that.
Brad, go first.
When Aaron left, it was a shock. I remember thinking, feeling like, a Branch Davidian and David Koresh left. It was like...
You want to think of another example? Take your time.
It was shocking. Aaron, here's another bad metaphor. I always make this joke. Aaron, because of his tremendous gifts, I used to joke, you were just waiting for this guy to bring these scripts down. It was just an incredible outpouring of amazing writing. We would walk around saying, he's lost, he's lost. I felt like it was a great show about democracy, kind of run by Kim Jong-il. Yeah, it's like the great leader does not have, Act 3 yet. Oh, the great leader has it. Let's say the words perfectly. It was shocking and terrifying to lose him. I think John Wells, who took over very graciously, would admit that he felt the first year that he took over was a tough year because he was trying to continue to make it an Aaron Sorkin show. I think then in the subsequent years, it found its own different identity and different process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Janelle, go ahead.
Aaron is a total genius, and that first 4 years was extraordinarily exciting and heady, and we all sat there, and I think, I speak for myself, I was the only one that actually probably cried, but I think everybody wanted to cry in the meeting where they, Mom and Dad, Tommy Schlamme and Aaron Sorkin told us their they're leaving, and
I
we
cried.
were just devastated. We were really
How was
quite
that different
devastated.
from any other?
Yeah, I
meeting?
cried every day.
Sorry, Janelle, go ahead.
But that said, it was also, after 4 years, it was getting to be, it was a lot of, it was just a lot of, it was an intense experience that became a little calmer just because John had a big group of writers, and it was a little more organized. So that was a different kind of culture that just happened. And it was, John is so very good at his job, and he also was there from the beginning. So it's not like some new guy came over and took over. It was already this person that we really loved and trusted. And there were already writers that were writing on the show aside from Aaron. So to me, it was okay. And there are people that say to me, they say, oh, I'm the biggest West Wing fan in the world, and they're geeking out and getting all, teary-eyed and talking about how much they love the show. And then they say, and then I find out in the conversation, oh, I stopped watching after Aaron left. And I said, then you are not a real West Wing fan, because you have to know, you have to love the characters and see what happens. So I think the show was terrific for all the way to the end. We had our bumpy years, but I thought it was pretty great.
I remember John Wells, imagine having to follow Aaron, and he himself, he's going to write the first script, but at the read-through he said, I feel like Ethel Merman's understudy.
Mm-hmm. Richard Schiff, your reaction to Aaron leaving at the end of the 4th season, along with Tommy Schlamme, who was the brilliant director who gave you the pilot of The West Wing, who guided all of the other directors who came through the show for those first 4 years.
That show would not have happened without Tommy.
The director Emmys
No,
were
essential.
all thanks to Tommy. He wasn't the only one who won one. But that was a work of utter brilliance. I read the script. I remember reading the script a year before the pilot was made. I read it, NBC had the script. And then a year later, the pilot's made, and I see what Tommy did to that script with these genius artists on screen, and I was stunned because this brilliant script then just became this astonishingly better show, thanks to Tommy. Richard Schiff, your reaction at the end of season 4 when they left?
Yeah, I was waiting for the question mark. Was that it? Yes. It's funny you just mentioned Tommy because I just saw him yesterday. Because I went to Santa Fe when I'm doing another project based on the Manhattan Project, and Tommy's directing that, and Dave Kamaides, who was our brilliant Steadicam operator, is there shooting that show. It was just a great reunion. Tommy and I have worked together a couple of times since The West Wing, and he's a confidant of mine. He happens to be utterly brilliant. He was an ear that would take my concerns directly to Aaron if I didn't have access to Aaron's. I felt he was an incredible collaborator for this particular problem of Toby, who was a kind of complex and dark and oddly put together character, and I had a lot of concerns for him. And having Aaron and Tommy around for those 4 years, a perfect example was the episode of the homeless Korean War veteran for which Aaron won an Emmy, and I think I won an Emmy for that episode. It started out written by a wonderful writer named Rick Cleveland, who's now working on House of Cards, and it was a very, very different episode that actually got me very upset because I didn't think Toby was captured in the right way. But I got really upset to the point where it appears, and Tommy and Aaron came down and we all talked about it, and the three of us collaborated to create one of the favorite shows of the 7-year run. And it was partly because of that collaboration and their willingness to listen and create stuff together and take nothing for granted. And it's why I love working with them so much. So when they left, it was heartbreaking for me because I felt like I was left alone flailing with this character. And, Lawrence, you got Toby and Eli, Addie, and a couple of others. I don't think John got him, and I don't think, so I think Toby was kind of left flailing out to sea after season 4. And so I have a very different opinion of those last 3 years, as you can tell. But I thought it was a valiant effort on John's part and on everyone's part to maintain the quality, which was near brilliance every week with Aaron and Tommy around. And we came close to that a number of times after they left. But it was a very different experience for me. It was very, very tough for me. But I applaud their effort.
You know, I'm glad that that last question was about Aaron and about Aaron leaving, because Aaron, Created by it's the most important credit in a show. Nothing would happen without that creator. He was extraordinary in what he did. And Janelle's got 2 kids at home who are just out of control. I was outside the walls. I was outside the walls of Warner Brothers on the day that happened. I was working on another show on the Universal lot, and I think I talked to just about everybody on the show when that happened. A lot of calls going back and forth. The first call I got was from John Wells saying, I really need you back here. And I really need you back here, if your show's canceled, which he already knew was going to be canceled. And I didn't want to go back because I'd done that show before, but then I realized, no, I didn't. I did Aaron's show before. This is going to be a completely new thing. And so I did it under the crazy genius regime of Aaron Sorkin with my office right beside Aaron's, for that first year. And then I went back into this other thing where John Wells just made it run like a Swiss train, just all this incredible training he has as a producer. And he did this incredibly brave thing as a writer that none of us wanted to do. He wrote the first 2 episodes in the first season after Aaron left. None of us wanted to get up to bat as writers in the shadow of Aaron. And I was the laziest of them all. I didn't get up. I don't think I wrote anything until about episode 12. And then, I'm doing this show on MSNBC, and every once in a while there's a point to be made by using a West Wing clip, and I love to see my old friends on screen, and so I do that. And there was a night, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, it's all a blur to me, when I put on a clip of something that I'd written. And Aaron saw it because he watches my show a lot. And he emailed me. What I already knew is that Aaron never watched the show after he left. And he let us all know that. He never watched it. And so he emailed me saying again, I've never watched the show since I left. And so I'd never seen that scene that you just showed, that you wrote. And I have saved this email because I want it to appear in whatever size obituary I get, because it's Aaron Sorkin with the most beautiful generosity about what he saw in that scene, fully perceptive of what I was trying to do. It's the greatest artistic compliment I've gotten in the area of TV writing. And so I'm glad that this discussion began with Aaron Sorkin Created by on the screen. I'm glad that you brought him up as our way to close this. None of us would be here without him. I think all of us would work with him again in a minute if we had a chance to do so. And I want to thank Bradley Whitford for being here on campus. I want to thank Janelle Maloney for keeping those kids quiet in New York for this entire discussion. Thank you, Richard Schiff from the Makeup Trailer or wherever you are in San Francisco for joining us. Thank you, Harvard, for having us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Good time. I gotta go.
I do this every day.